Hello guys and welcome to a new episode of Leubner's lecture. Today we're going to talk about lists, tables, the charset of HTML files. We're going to talk about IDs, symbols, emojis, and also about the HTML5 semantic elements. Before we start, I want to mention that this video is part of my lecture at the Higher Technical School of Kaindorf in Austria. Okay, so let's just start right away. I already prepared the basic HTML structure that we talked about with having the language set up here, having the charset set there, and a viewport, as well as a title. And if you remember, the title is the thing that appears right up here at the tab name. Okay, so let's give a headline to the page and just name it HTML5 HTML episode 3. So this is what we're going to do today. So we're going to start right away with unordered list. And an unordered list is a list that is just a collection of values. So you just have bullet points describing a collection. So there is no order behind that. And the tag to be used is UL for unordered list. And in there, we're going to nest the list items, which is the LI tag. And then we can just say, okay, bananas, for example, as a shopping list, or we need milk here, or what else would be possible? Oh, let's just grab some apples too. And for sure, you can also nest lists into lists. So we can just create a new unordered list in there because maybe there are green apples and red apples. And if we're going to save this, you see that this is automatically creating a nested list then inside there. So this is the unordered list. I think it's very straightforward to be used. The same is also true for the ordered list. But now the order is important, which means that we have numberings. So the tag is OL for ordered list. And we're once again going to use the list items LI in there. And today we're going to get some choose. So this is the first thing to be done. The second thing might then be, once again, apples. And also in there, you can nest them. So just use another OL and LIs in there where we say, okay, green apples once again, and there are also red ones. And this is also automatically creating a nesting there with the correct intents to be used. These are the most common lists, and they also come with a default styling on how the bullet points look like, how the numbering looks like, and so on. There is a list that's not that famous and many people don't know about, but it's the definition list. Oh, I cannot spell anymore. Definition list. And this definition list is a very cool thing because you can style it in a real nice way using CSS for giving definitions to terms, to words, or whatever. And a definition list always starts with the DL tag for definition list. And then in there, we're always having a pair of tags that we're using. So first of all, it's the DT, which is the definition text. Maybe just write that down here. Definition text. And after the text, we have the definition data. This is the DD tag. This is what we're going to use. For example, if you want to define a definition for HTML, then it would be hypertext markup language. So let's save it. And what we see here is that it's saying HTML as the definition text and then the definition data with an intent there. Okay, so let's do another one. Maybe let's do it for HTTP. You already should know what the definition of that is. It's hypertext transfer protocol. Okay. So this is basically what the definition list looks like. I think it's also straightforward if you know what the meanings of DT and DD is. So, okay. The next thing we're going to look at is the table. So tables in HTML, they can be very minimalistic, but they can also be very, very big when it comes to when you use all the tags that you can use in there. And we're now going to take a look at the maximum expression that you can have when it comes to tables. So let's define the table tag. So this is what the table starts with, and when just using that tag, nothing appears on the web page. So it's just a table being defined without any content in there. And basically a table always consists of two parts. So it's the header part, so all the headings that we have for each of our columns, and then we have the body part. And the heading part is the T head, and the body part is the T body. So this is what these two things look like. And in our head, we can have multiple rows, but I think the standard way is to have just one heading row there. And what we're doing is we're defining a table row first, which is TR. So we're having one table row in there. And then for each column that we have, we're going to define a table header. And this is the TH tag in there. We can just say, okay, we have a first name and we have a last name. So if we're going to save this, we already see something. So we see that we have two columns there with the first column being named first name and the second one last name. But what you see is that we don't have any structure. You will see that it is formatted in some way in a few minutes, but there are no lines, there is no grid, and so on. All of these things are optional and they can be done with CSS, which we will learn about in later episodes. And then for the body, the structure is always the same thing. So we're defining a table row. So this is our first row after the headline. And in there, we're defining our table data, which is TD. And there we're just defining things. So the first name might be John, Smith, the last name. If we want to have another row, we're just doing TR again. And then for the first column, TD, it's Samantha. And for the second column, it's Brown. So now we see already that it's structured in some way. So it's not just text side by side. It's structured like a table, but without any nice design. That this is what tables look like. So for each of the table rows that you're defining, you need to have this construction here where we have the table row, and then for each column we have a TD here. Okay, so this looks pretty great, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the charset inside of our HTML file, and therefore we have to do something special because currently we're using a charset of UTF-8, which is totally fine because this is the standard, this is what you should use. But back then in older days, there were other charsets used, and the one that we're going to try is the ISO 8859-1. And if I'm going to save that, nothing is going to change here. The reason for that is that we're using live server, and live server is very clever and automatically checks what the charset of the file is and is overruling what we are defining here. So to see exactly what this is all about, I'm going to open up this file directly in the browser. So therefore, I'm just going to go to the folder where the index.html file is, and I'm just going to drag it into the browser. So we see there is a difference here. Here we have the server running, and here we're just directly opening the file, okay? And what we now want to do is we want to write down a sentence, and the sentence that we're going to write down here, let's use a paragraph for that, and we're going to say this is some example sentence for Michael Müller and Thomas Käfer. So we're not seeing something here right now, but we're seeing it there, and we see it's perfectly fine. But if we go here, where we defined our char set, and there is no server between forcing us to do the right thing, we see that we have problems here. We have problems with our umlauts because they cannot be interpreted in a correct way. And in older days, back then, when the Charset wasn't UTF-8 already as a standard, so it was something else, or wasn't UTF-8 yet, we had this problem, and there was a way to correct this and to go around these things here. And what we're doing is we're going to use character entities. So for special characters or for characters that are reserved, there were different things that we could use. And for example, reserved characters, we know that the ampersand is a reserved character. Why is it a reserved character? Because it's being used in URIs. So instead of writing the ampersand itself, we use the ampersand and then AMP to define the ampersand here. Or, for example, using the copyright sign, so just using the copyright sign here at the end, we can just say the ampersand copy semicolon, and this gives us the copyright sign here at the end. So this is how this entity encoding works here, and this entity spelling works. And this is also being used for umlauts that we have there, and this is always the same structure. So it's the ampersand, then the umlaut you want to present, so it's U or A or O, whatever, and then U, M, L, and a semicolon. And this gives you Müller here, and for Käfer we can do the same thing, but with the A. So A, U, M, L, and this then gives us Käfer here. So this is basically how you use it. If you want to have an uppercase umlaut we're going to use just an uppercase A here, which gives us an uppercase umlaut here. So these are the things that you should know about when maybe dealing with older versions. But you should know that back then we had these things, and for characters, so we don't need to do that today with umlauts anymore, but we still should do it for the reserved characters to do not get into trouble. So most of the browsers should be fine with that, without that, so just doing it in that way. But we should always be aware that these characters are reserved, so let's use an entity encoding for these things there. That might be a good choice. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to learn about IDs. First of all, let's just change that thing back here to UTF-8 so that we're in the standard once again. Okay, so we're now going to talk about IDs, and therefore I'm creating a div. And this div has some text in here where it says, please come here and see my great emojis and symbols. So this is just a sentence that we're defining. And what we do is that we give this thing an ID, so an attribute ID, where we just give this something like come here. So this is the ID, come here. It's not changing anything in there, but at least it's doing something. And what we want to do right now is we want to create a list of emojis here, because this is what we just wrote down. So we want to show the user some emojis and some symbols, and use an unordered list for that. And the symbols that we're going to show is the copyright symbols. So you already know about that one. Maybe the euro sign might be useful at some point. And what about some emojis? And for showing the emojis, we need to use the Unicode and Unicode table, because we need to have the Unicode decimal representation of an emoji. And there are a lot of websites you might want to use, and I think that one looks pretty good. So if we open up that here, and if we go to decimal, we get a code there. So this is the code. It's 128513. And we can just copy that code. We can go back to our web page, to our HTML here, and then we're just going to use this by using the ampersand and the hash, followed by the number and the semicolon at the end. And this is just inserting that emoji. Let's grab another one there. What's a good one to be used? I don't know, maybe something with cats. So let's take that one here and just do it again. So the ampersand, the hash, semicolon at the end, and if we're going to save it, we have our cat in there. Okay, so this is how that basically works, and this is pretty cool to be used, and this is possible since UTF-8 is the standard in there. Okay, so what do we do with our ID? We want to use it in some way, and before we can use that, we need to create some line breaks because we want to just go down a little bit in our table, in our document. So I'm just going to create a bunch of BRs there. I know it's not the best thing to do, but for now it's just fine to do that. So I think that should be enough. Yeah, so we can scroll down a little bit now, it's fine. And down there, we're going to create a link. Still remember, we have the A tag, and we just say, please click me there. And if you remember the lectures that we had about URI and URL, there was one part of URI that was identifying parts of a document, and that was a fragment. And the fragment always started with the hash, and this is what we're doing right now. So we are referring to the ID that we defined up here. So this is please click me, and the ID was come here. So in our link, we're going to use come here, and before that, we're going to write the hash. So we're defining a link to that ID. So if we scroll down, we see the please click me link down there. And if we click there, it automatically brings us to where we defined our ID. So this is please come here, and this is now what's on the top of our browser. So this is how links within a document to IDs work. So that's very cool to use fragments here to get to that ID. And the cool thing is that you also see this in the URL here. So it just added the fragment. So this is now what's identifying that part of our document. How cool is that? Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about today is HTML5 semantics. So when HTML5 was introduced, they had the idea that we also want to structure our web page a little bit better. So to have some self-speaking tags to be used, and they invented some of them, and we're going to take a look at some of them. And the first one is the header. So the header basically defines things that are at the top of our page and things that are above our nav bar. So this is what the header is about. And please be very careful that you're not mixing it up with the head tag that we're having here, okay? So the header is an HTML5 semantic tag, and it's not coming with any formatting or anything, but it's there to do a semantic structure. So we're just getting rid of our VRs here. Yeah, so there we have it. Then we have the nav, which is kind of the navigation part of our web page. It does not have to be at the top. It can also be on one of the sides or even at the bottom of the page, so how you prefer it. Then for some content that we are grouping on our web page, we should use the section tag. So the section is being used to just group some content we're having. If we have some single contributions like articles and so on, we're going to use the article semantic element. For things that are on the right or on the left-hand side of our web page, maybe also navigation things or menu bars or whatever, we can use aside. And finally, if something's at the bottom of our page, we can use the footer to represent what the footer of our page is. So from now on, when doing the exercises, just try to remember what the semantic elements are and try to use them in a meaningful way in your web pages, okay? Because this is how you get to using them and how you learn about when it makes sense to do them. Okay, guys. So I think we're done for today. This is already the end of the video, and I hope that you learned something new and also enjoyed it today. And if you liked this video, please leave a like. And if you do not want to miss any upcoming episodes, I would be happy if you subscribe my channel. So thanks for watching, guys, and see you again. Bye.